My thumb caught the edge of the sticker backing, peeling it away with a satisfying dry snick. It was 5 in the morning, and the warehouse was humming with that low electric silence that only exists before the machinery really starts grinding. The air smelled of corrugated cardboard, dust, and the sharp chemical tang of industrial floor cleaner. I looked at the sticker in my hand. It was utterly nonsensical. It depicted a taco wearing a tuxedo, dancing with a sentient bowl of guacamole. There was no text, no context, just a tuxedo-wearing taco engaging in formal dance. I glanced over my shoulder. The rows of high bay racking stretched out into the dim distance, empty. No supervisors, no early birds, just me and the machine. I walked over to the forklift parked in Bay 4. This wasn't just any machine, it was the machine. It belonged to the company technically, but if you asked the man who operated it during the day shift, he would tell you it was his personal throne. I crouched down, finding a spot on the roll cage, just behind the operator's seat, a place where you wouldn't see it immediately, upon sitting down, but you would definitely spot it the moment you turned your head to check your blind spot. I pressed the sticker onto the cold yellow metal. I smoothed it down with my thumb, ensuring there were no air bubbles. It looked ridiculous against the industrial steel. "Have a good morning, Gary," I whispered to the empty seat. I walked away to clock in, my heart rate slightly elevated. It was such a small, petty act. I didn't know then that this single sticker was the beginning of a 6-month descent into obsession, paranoia, and accidental psychological warfare. I didn't know I was about to dismantle a man's ego, one piece of adhesive paper at a time. To understand why I did this, you have to understand Gary. Every workplace has a Gary. He was a fixture of the warehouse, a man who had been there for 20 years and wore his tenure like a suit of armor. He was untouchable, or at least he believed he was. He had mastered the art of managing up to the floor managers and the big bosses in the air-conditioned offices upstairs. Gary was a model employee, reliable, experienced, a company man. To the rest of us on the floor, Gary was a nightmare. He was a man constructed entirely of grievances. He didn't just have opinions. He had verdicts, and he delivered them with a sneer that suggested anyone who disagreed was beneath him. He had a particular disdain for anyone who didn't look like him, pray like him, or live like him. He didn't shout these views, he was too careful for HR violations, but he let them leak out in break room conversations, in jokes that weren't really jokes, and in the way he stared at certain people. And then there was the germaphobia. Now, I don't judge anyone for wanting to be clean. Warehouses are dirty places. But Gary weaponized his hygiene. He didn't have an assigned forklift. We operated on a first-come, first-served basis. But he had complained and intimidated until everyone knew that Unit 4 was Gary's unit. Every morning, his shift started with a ritual. He would arrive with a spray bottle of industrial disinfectant and a roll of blue shop towels for 30 minutes. 30 minutes. He was on the clock, for he would scrub that machine. The steering wheel, the levers, the cage, the seat. He cleaned it with the intensity of a surgeon prepping for open-heart surgery. If anyone else used his machine on the off shifts and left so much as a fingerprint on the display, Gary would spend the morning stomping around, making sure everyone knew he was the victim of carelessness. He would park the machine in the most inconvenient spots at the end of his shift, burying it behind pallets or in narrow aisles, just to make sure the night crew wouldn't touch it. I usually got along with everyone. My strategy was simple: keep my head down, do the work, go home. When Gary made his comments or tried to micromanage me, I just nodded and disengaged. It wasn't worth the energy, but everyone has a breaking point. Mine came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was wrapping a pallet near the loading dock when Gary walked by. He was in a foul mood, presumably because someone had moved his favorite tape gun. He started ranting to me, unprompted, about the state of the world. The conversation quickly pivoted to his favorite targets, the LGBTQ community. He used language that made my skin crawl, framing his hostility as concern for traditional values. It was ugly. It was the kind of casual contempt that assumes the listener agrees, which is almost more insulting than open hostility. I didn't say anything. I just finished my rap, walked away, and seethed. By the way, we've got some even crazier stories lined up for this week. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss them. But enough of that, let's get back to the matter at hand. That night, I was venting to my girlfriend Sarah while she graded papers at the kitchen table. I hate that I didn't say anything, I said, pacing the kitchen. But he's practically unfireable. If I start a war, I'm the one who loses. He's got the supervisors wrapped around his finger. Sarah looked up, clicking her pen. She was a kindergarten teacher, a woman of infinite patience but a wicked sense of humor. He's the germaphobe, right? The one who bleaches the forklift? Yeah, he treats that thing like a sterile bubble. Sarah reached into her oversized work tote and pulled out a massive, crinkling bag. She dumped it onto the table. Hundreds of colorful, glossy shapes spilled out. I bought a bulk pack of stickers for the kids as rewards, she said, picking through the pile. But I have to filter them. Half of these are inexplicable. They aren't inappropriate. Exactly. They're just weird. Like fever dream weird. She slid one across the table to me. It was a picture of a chicken wing with a cat's face floating in space. Just stick them on his machine, she said casually. Just one somewhere he has to touch to remove it. I looked at the cat wing. A slow smile spread across my face. He starts at 7. I start at 6. I have an hour alone with the machine every morning. Do it, she said. Petty payback can be cathartic. The first week was an experiment. On day 2, I placed a sticker of an avocado lifting weights on the hydraulic lever. On day 3, it was a smiling piece of toast wearing a top hat, placed right in the center of the steering wheel. I didn't stick around to watch him find them. I would place the sticker, go to my station at the far end of the warehouse, and wait. The reaction was subtle at first. I'd see Gary later in the day, scrubbing the machine with more vigor than usual. His face would be tight, his jaw set. He looked irritated, like he had stepped in gum. By the second week, the ritual had become the highlight of my day. I woke up alert. I would dig through Sarah's bag of rejects, looking for the most baffling image I could find. A sloth riding a rocket, a slice of pizza with muscular arms. I began to realize that the genius wasn't in the vandalism. The stickers peeled off easily enough, but in the mystery. One afternoon, about 2 months in, I was working alongside Mike, a guy I'd become close friends with over the years, my work husband, as we joked. Mike was solid, quiet, and equally tired of Gary's antics. We were restacking a fallen pallet when I saw Gary storming past us, his face a mottled red. He was muttering to himself, gesturing wildly at nothing. "What's up with him?" I asked Mike, feigning innocence. Mike chuckled, leaning on a stack of boxes. "Oh, he's unraveling. Apparently someone from the night shift keeps putting stickers on his lift. He thinks it's a targeted attack on his hygiene. He spent 40 minutes cleaning this morning because he found a sticker of a dancing banana on his seat. I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted copper. I couldn't hold it. I let out a snort that turned into a laugh. Mike looked at me confused, and then his eyes went wide. "No way. It's a sloth tomorrow," I whispered. "A sloth wearing sunglasses." Mike dissolved into laughter, doubling over. We stood there behind a wall of inventory, losing it. When our supervisor, Dave, walked around the corner, we barely pulled it together. "What's so funny?" Dave asked, looking tired. I wiped a tear from my eye. "Just warehouse stuff, Dave." I ended up telling Dave the truth a week later, mostly because I was worried Gary would escalate it to HR and I wanted to get ahead of it. Dave listened, his face impassive, then a slow grin cracked his features. "Is he complaining to me officially?" Dave asked. "No," I said. "Has he filed a report?" "No." "Then I don't know anything about it," Dave said, turning back to his clipboard. "And frankly, if he spent less time scrubbing and more time lifting, our numbers would be better. Carry on." With tacit approval, the operation expanded. Mike started scouting locations. We diversified. It wasn't just the machine anymore. Sometimes a sticker would appear on Gary's locker. Once, carefully on the back of his hard hat. 4 months passed. The atmosphere around Gary had changed. He wasn't just annoyed anymore, he was unsettled. He stopped chatting with management. He stopped making his rounds to gossip. He spent his breaks sitting near his machine, watching it, his eyes scanning the warehouse floor. I was walking past the charging station one afternoon when Gary intercepted me. He didn't look good. His eyes were rimmed with red, and he looked worn down. "You?" he said. "It wasn't an accusation, just a summons. Come look at this." I put on my best confused face. "What's up, Gary? Just look." He dragged me over to his workstation, a small podium near the dock doors where he kept his logs. He reached under the podium and pulled out a large flat sheet of cardboard, roughly 3 feet by 3 feet. He slammed it onto the desk. "Look at this," he said tightly. I looked, and I honestly felt a chill go down my spine. It was a mural, a chaotic, colorful, obsessive mosaic of every single sticker I had placed over the last 4 months. He hadn't thrown them away. He had peeled them off, carefully preserving the adhesive, and stuck them to this board. There were hundreds of them. The dancing tacos, the muscular pizzas, the cats in space suits, arranged in rows by date. It was a masterpiece of fixation. "Man," I said, my voice unsteady, that's a lot of stickers." "Every single shift," Gary whispered, leaning in close. His breath smelled of stale coffee and peppermint. "I come in, and it's there, waiting for me. Someone is doing this on purpose. Someone is trying to wear me down." I looked at the board again. It was undeniable proof of how much space I occupied in this man's head. I had intended to annoy him, maybe unsettle him a little. Instead, I had become the architect of his anxiety. "Who would do that?" I asked, steadying my voice. "That's just it," Gary said, his voice dropping. "I know who it is." My stomach dropped. "Who?" Gary looked around to ensure we were alone. "It's Leo, from the night shift." I froze. Leo was a young trans man who had started working nights about 6 months prior. He was quiet, hardworking, and polite. He was also the primary target of Gary's harsh behind-the-back comments. Gary refused to use Leo's correct pronouns and often referred to him in demeaning ways when supervisors weren't around. "Leo," I repeated. "Why Leo?" Gary's face twisted into something ugly. "He's fixated on me. That's what this is. He wants my attention, I think. I think he wants to scare me or get me in trouble." I stared at him. The leap he had made was shocking, and the intent behind it was unsettling. Gary had taken a prank involving dancing taco stickers and twisted it into a narrative where he was under threat. "Gary," I said slowly, "that sounds unlikely. Leo barely speaks to anyone." "That's how people hide things," Gary snapped, tapping the cardboard. "Quiet." "Watching these stickers? You're a beautiful flower. I want to hug you. It's manipulation. He's targeting me." I looked at the sticker he was pointing to. It was a cartoon cactus with a speech bubble that said "free hugs." The guilt I had felt a moment ago evaporated. It was replaced by a cold resolve. I had been planning to stop. I had thought the mural was the peak, but now Gary wasn't just being difficult. He was risking someone else's safety and job with his assumptions. If I stopped now, Gary would think he had figured it out.
Wow.
I said flatly. "That's intense, Gary." "I'm building a file," Gary said, running his hand over the cardboard. "I'm going to management once I have enough proof. I'm going to shut this down before it gets worse." I walked away feeling a different kind of weight. This wasn't funny anymore. This was damage control. I went to Mike immediately. We huddled between the rows of pallet racking. "He thinks it's Leo," I told him. Mike's face darkened. "You're kidding. He thinks Leo is targeting him. He's saving the stickers as evidence." "We have to stop," Mike said. "Now." "No," I said. "If we stop now, he pins it on Leo. We have to prove it's not him." "When is Leo's next night off?" Mike checked his phone. "Thursday." "Perfect," I said. "On Thursday, Gary is going to get the biggest, weirdest sticker yet." The campaign shifted gears. We became careful. We checked the schedule constantly, on nights when Leo wasn't even in the building, when he was clearly not present. I made sure Gary's machine was covered. We escalated the absurdity to dismantle Gary's narrative. We avoided anything that could be read as personal and leaned fully into the surreal. I found a sticker of a possum screaming into a void, a grim reaper riding a unicorn, one that just said "soon" in Comic Sans over a picture of a ham sandwich 6 months. Half a year. Gary was worn down. He looked exhausted. He stopped spending half an hour cleaning. He would wipe the seat, scan for stickers, groan, and start driving. More importantly, his theory about Leo collapsed. He couldn't accuse someone who hadn't been there when the stickers kept appearing. The file vanished. The cardboard mural, however, kept growing. One morning, nearly 7 months after the first sticker, I walked in to find Gary sitting on the bumper of his forklift. He wasn't cleaning, he was just sitting there, head in his hands. He looked defeated, not angry, just tired. I walked up to him. I had a sticker in my pocket, a cat wearing a shark costume, but I didn't place it. "Rough morning, Gary?" I asked. He looked up. The fire was gone. "I can't do it anymore," he mumbled. "I don't know who it is. I don't know why." It was the first time I had heard him sound vulnerable without blaming someone else. I looked at Mike, watching from a distance. He gave me a small nod. "Gary," I said. "What?" "It's not Leo." Gary frowned. "What?" "And it's not someone out to get you. It's not a conspiracy." I reached into my pocket, pulled out the shark cat sticker, and placed it gently on the roll cage next to his hand. Gary stared at it, then at me. The realization came slowly. His face shifted through confusion, disbelief, embarrassment, and finally resignation. "You?" he said quietly. "Me," I said. "And Mike, and sometimes Sarah." He stood unsteady. "You? But we talk. I thought you were making people miserable." "Gary," I said evenly, "you treated the machine like a shrine and people like obstacles. So, stickers." He didn't shout, he didn't run to management, he just sighed. Everything deflated at once. "I kept them," he said. "All of them." "I know," I said. "It's thorough." He looked at me with a mix of resentment and reluctant acknowledgement. "I'm going to get you back." "Okay," I said, but he didn't. Gary stayed for a few more years. He never became a saint. He still had his habits, but he stopped targeting Leo. He stopped hoarding the machine. And whenever he started winding up, I'd catch his eye and reach into my pocket, and Gary would stop. He kept the mural last I heard. It was still in the back of his locker, a reminder of how close he came to losing himself over a dancing taco. Sometimes, accountability doesn't arrive loudly. Sometimes, it just looks like a man realizing he isn't the center of the story after all.